Hey everyone, my name is Adi. We will start to draw together this watermelon. In this tutorial we will use watercolor. We will add details with colored pencils in the next video. For today's video you will need your watercolor equipment and watercolor paper. I chose hot pressed paper that is more smooth than other watercolor papers, but it's not as smooth as printer paper, for example. We will use colored pencils too, so it's good to have a paper with a little bit texture, but not too much texture. I made the plan in light lines of pencil, so they will not be visible after I go over them with watercolor. If you want to draw only with colored pencils, it will be better to use colored pencils for the plan. You can create the plan on a cheap paper and copy it later on to the watercolor paper. If you want to learn more about copying techniques, I will leave a link to a video in this subject in the description below. You can use masking fluid to keep the highlights in white. I start with adding yellow watercolor to the area between the red and the green. I used diluted paint over the dry paper. In this video I didn't choose the wet into wet technique that we used in other videos, because I want to have more control over the color. I don't want one color to go to an area of another color. That being said, I still want to have soft and graduate transitions between the different colors. So I place the colors beside one another while they are still wet. That way the edges, and only the edges, blend. It's hard to know where the yellow ends and where the red starts. Watercolors are great to create a transition like this. The base layer will make it easier to draw with the colored pencils later on. I don't need the watercolor to be dark, because I will add the darker details later on. There's no need to cover the watercolor layer with colored pencils in the lighter areas of the watermelon. There is a lighter green that blends into the yellow. I ignore the details of the watermelon. For now, I just create blocks of color. I use blue in the left side of the watermelon because it seems more blue and more cold. We talked in the video about color, how color can jump from one object to another. Different light sources can also affect what colors we will see. If we look closely at something, we are likely to find colors and details that we might not notice in first glance. I paint the edges red and add some touches of red in the blue, because I see variation in the color. It is harder to cover large areas with colored pencils, so it makes sense to use both watercolors and colored pencils in the same artwork. When we will add the colored pencils to the watermelon, it will not be like starting from zero. It is easier to achieve a detailed result in colored pencils than in watercolors. I use a mixture of blue and green to create a strong shadow underneath the watermelon. The shadow is connected to the watermelon. We can't really see where the watermelon ends and where the plate starts. So I go over some of the green of the watermelon with the color of the shadow. The shadow that the watermelon casts is very important to show that the watermelon doesn't fly in the air, that it is above something. Now I move on to the plate. I use a mixture of blue and grey. I use different levels of darkness. I leave a white line between the dark shadow and the grey of the plate. I don't close the plate in the areas where I don't see a boundary. In these places, the whiteness of the background and the whiteness of the plate merge into one block of color. We can guess where the boundary is. We don't have to see it surrounding the entire plate. Our mind can figure out the shape of the plate without seeing all of it. I use light grey in the areas that aren't dark. When I took the photo, I planned ahead that I will use white background. And I wanted to let the plate be connected to the background. The subject is a watermelon, so I don't feel like I need the plate to be significant. And I actually think that the more minimalistic the plate is, the more it will emphasize the watermelon. I also think that the white make it feel breezy and lit. I think it goes well with the summer vibe. I leave a white line between the plate and the shadow it casts in the left side. I will add a touch of red in the shadow that the plate casts. Not only that I see red in it, it also makes sense to repeat the color of the subject in the background. It makes the drawing harmonic. The lower part of the plate is darker. After the color dries, you can use brush with clean water to make the edges softer. Before moving on to the colored pencil stage, make sure that everything have dried completely. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. The watermelon will look like this after we add the colored pencils. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, so you will not miss the next part. See you soon. Bye bye.